often wondered when I attend board meetings, management conferences, and the like, why people are always talking about the past or the present. Very seldom do they talk about the future. If at all, they might spend 10% talking about the future, but 90% about the past. And I always tell them there's nothing you can do about the past. You can no longer manage the past. That's done with. What you can only do is manage the future. So shouldn't we all have a very, very futuristic thinking process rather than something that only looks at the past or the present? Perhaps we should just summarize the past and says this is what we learned from it, and then we constantly move on. So I have a saying that you have to make yourself obsolete every day if you want to reach your full potential. So do away with your past and move on so that you can reach your highest potential. One of my favorite authors in futuristic thinking is John Nasby. He actually wrote Megatrends and published this in 1982. He wrote another one in the year 2000 or something. What was his method? Well, he would gather bits and pieces of information. He said that he subscribed to 60 regional dailies in the US, and he would cut up unusual articles. And he would try to relate what do these unusual articles put together, what are they saying about the future? Because he believed that the future is already being manifested in the present. If you can only read the handwritings on the wall, if you can actually put together disparate facts, then perhaps you can actually look at the future. I remember in the early 90s, I was doing an economic paper for the then President Fidel Ramos. And as I was looking at the data on enterprises, I noticed that at the time there were only 2,000 large enterprises, 2,000 medium enterprises, but the rest were small and micro enterprises. And I began asking myself, who's taking care of teaching, educating, mentoring, guiding these micro and small enterprises? At the time, the school that I was teaching in was mainly focused on the top 2,000 companies. And I said, in the future, I think we should be offering a course on entrepreneurship. At that time, nobody was talking about entrepreneurship. Now everybody's talking about it. And I began to do my research on entrepreneurship for 5 years and finally launched a master's in entrepreneurship program. But how did I see that the future will be about entrepreneurship? Just by looking at data, piecing them together. It's what like detectives do when they're trying to solve a crime. They put pictures on the wall and they connect them with arrows and they step back and say, what does this all mean? Next time around, be curious. What do these facts mean? And all of these facts are abounding in the world, So you just put them together and maybe describe the future. About 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or more, I think, there was a prediction that there will be a pandemic in the world. And it happened now. But somebody was predicting it. Before the Asian financial crisis of 97-98, there was a bank that was predicting the collapse of the property market, but nobody was listening. And then it happened. Some people can see the future, but most people can't see, and so they get left behind. John Nasby offers 11 mindsets or ways of thinking that should help us see the future. The first mindset is while many things change, most things will remain constant. So the human need will remain constant, but the human want will always change. The basics of most things remain the same. Products and markets may change. Tools, techniques, and technologies may change. But selling products and services with the right customer satisfiers at a profit remain the core business activity. What we do, eat, sleep, work, play, remain constant. How we do it changes. We must distinguish between real and apparent change, basic shifts and fads. Do not be swayed by quantity. Go for quality differences. The second mindset of John Nasby, that the future is embedded in the present. The directions and turns the world will take are embedded in the past and the present. But we have to keep a distance and a clear eye. Megatrends predicted the shift from the industrial to the information society. This would lead to body awareness as demand on physical effort shrinks. For sedentary workers, it's going to be more difficult to keep in shape and stay fit. So actually, he was predicting that fitness gym will come about, which happened in the 1990s. Mindset number 3, focus on the score of the game. What is happening on the ground, bottom line, is what matters. Do not complicate things. Simplify. Most of the time, we put too much clutter in our lives. Example, General Motors has been losing market share over the last few decades. In 2006, it posted losses of $192.6 billion. In 2008, it was in bankruptcy and bailed out by the US government. Meanwhile, Toyota has become the number one world automobile market. General Motors didn't look too far in the future and therefore was left behind. Mindset number 4, understanding how powerful it is not to have to be right. Many of us insist we are right. We argue and we argue. We're not really sure we're right, but we argue that we are right. If we take this attitude, we cannot be futurists. 1905, on his 26th year, Albert Einstein presented the theory of relativity and led the second big shift in the field of quantum mechanics. At the end of that year, E equals mc squared was born. Einstein was not afraid to be proven wrong. His biggest fear was to miss a fork in the road. Einstein's quest for immutable and universal laws depended on his belief to know what was right, not who was right. In the 1980s, physicists Robin Warren and Barrel Marshall postulated they were caused by bacteria, and everybody laughed at them. In 1983, Marshall began treating ulcer patients with antibiotics. He believed that all ulcers were caused by bacteria. In October 2005, Warren and Marshall were awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine for discovering the ulcer bug. Having to be right is a barrier to learning and understanding. It keeps you from growing, for there is no growth without changing, connecting, and questioning yourself. Mindset number 5. See the future as a picture puzzle. In order to explore the future, we have to make connections between things that seemingly don't fit, are not obviously related, and sometimes seems to contradict common sense of formulas. That's what John Naisbitt was doing when he was putting the articles together from 60 regional dailies. No one has ever solved a picture puzzle by putting the pieces in a straight line. Making the connections among pieces is more intuitive than calculated. Geniuses often build on details that many people can spot but can't connect. Einstein did not create the theory of relativity out of nothing. He picked the ripe fruits lying about, but he picked the right ones to connect to one another. Mindset number 6. Don't get so far ahead of the parade that people don't know you're in it. In Questions of Science, Galileo said, "The authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual." Mindset number 7. Resistance to change fails if benefits are made real. It is the responsibility of change agents to explain and make transparent the benefits of change and the consequences of not changing. Do not underestimate people. When they resist change, the benefits of not changing are still very high. When they embrace change, they are already discontented and burdened by the status quo. Let's take the existing crisis we have on hand, the COVID crisis. It forces many people to change. It's so life-changing, changes everything that we know about, experience on a daily life, that it forces people to change. Otherwise, people will not change. So the entire education system is shifting from face-to-face, maybe learning about more online learning, which was going about slowly before, but it will accelerate because of the crisis. Mindset number 8, things that we expect to happen always happen more slowly. In 4th century before Christ, Chinese children were playing with a spinner made out of a round stick with bird feathers placed crosswise at the top. Rotation of the stick between the palms produced enough ascending force to lift the spinner to the sky. During the Renaissance period, Leonardo da Vinci designed several airplanes and helicopters. None of the model would have flown, but the creative and engineering thinking was far ahead of time and imagination. 430 years later, Albert Ludwig Berlinger invented the first hand glider in 1811. A downwind draft crashed the glider and the inventor died. In 1986, the glider was reconstructed from the drawings made and it actually flew. The Wright brothers invented the first flying airplane in 1903. It is a surprise that OSAS, Sputnik, Man on the Moon, AIDS, SARS, 9/11 terrorist attack. However, all changes are evolutionary, not revolutionary. This COVID that we have is evolutionary. It has maybe started way, way back when. You go back to the Spanish flu 100 years ago and maybe more 100 years ago. And it has evolved. It mutates, takes different shapes. Things just take time, almost always more time than we expect. Mindset number 9, you don't get results by solving problems, by exploiting opportunities. Opportunity seekers know the future because they focus on the changes that will make a difference. Problem solvers deal with the past and the present and try to bring the situation back in control or back to the status quo. Jimmy Carter, the first entrepreneurial US president candidate, saw the opportunity in new media technologies and for the first time used them to gain enough delegates in the primaries to win the Democratic Party's nomination before the National Convention. In 2008, Barack Obama came from nowhere to win as the first black president. His army of new media technologies, chatters, bloggers, and twitters swung the elections. Mindset number 10, don't add unless you subtract. At General Electric, Jack Welch had a rule. Each unit had to let go of the bottom 10% of the employees, who were then replaced by more promising ones. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu often said, to attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day. Mindset number 11, don't forget the ecology of technology. With the advent of every new technology, ask 3 important questions. What will be enhanced? What will be diminished? What will be replaced? Technologies of the internet and the mobile phones are not just about technology. They're about social change, how we communicate with one another. Communication and interaction have been enhanced. Poetry and elegance have been diminished. The language of emotion has been replaced with the language of terse thoughts. The younger generation is indeed getting more connected, and yet psychologists say they're getting more alienated. Oftentimes, family and friends who gather together are not talking to one another. They're all busy texting in their cell phones, giving the message that the distant caller is more important than the persons in front of them. This tells us to be more mindful of the ecology of technology. The 11 mindsets that I talk about are a way of looking at things, a way of perceiving things that will force you to be more futuristic. For example, if you have the mindset of an alien coming on the Earth, looking at the Earth for the first time, well, you might imagine the ones that run the Earth are the cars, because you see them, they're the ones on the roads. But when you come closer, maybe you might even see that the people driving the cars are the slaves of the cars. That's a different way of looking from the outside. But that gives you a different perspective, that human beings are actually a slave to their cars. They will take their car, they will park the car, and they'll work all day so they can pay for the car. So you can see that that's one mindset. But that kind of changed the way you look at things. And that's how you should use these mindsets.